The night started like any other high-profile birthday bash in New York City. Champagne flowing, cameras flashing, and celebrities lined up in designer fits. Jim Jones had planned everything down to the last detail. It wasn't just a celebration of his life, it was a statement. A reminder to the culture that he was still here, still standing, still relevant. The venue: an upscale rooftop in downtown Manhattan. The guest list: exclusive Cameron, Fat Joe, Remy Ma. And even younger cats like Fivio Foreign and Lil J made an appearance. The mood was vibrant, the energy unmatched. But underneath all that glamour, there was tension in the air. Something that even the loudest trap beat couldn't drown out. Jim's son, Putty, had arrived late, and from the moment he walked in, something felt off. He wasn't smiling, wasn't mingling. He wasn't even dressed to impress. Just a black hoodie, some jeans, and a chain tucked under his shirt. People noticed. Cameras noticed, but nobody said anything. It was Jim's night after all. As the clock struck midnight, a moment that should have been filled with champagne toasts and laughter was interrupted by shouting near the bar. The music stopped. Heads turned. Security moved in slow, unsure if this was just typical hip-hop rowdiness or something more. And then, in the blink of an eye, chaos exploded. Buddy was on the floor, blood everywhere. Someone screamed. Someone else was filming. Jim was across the rooftop, frozen, unable to process what had just happened. For a split second, he thought this was some twisted prank. But the look in Cameron's eyes, wide, horrified, already pulling out his phone, told him this was real. Security scrambled. Bottles crashed. Some ran. Others froze. Jim pushed his way through the crowd, shoving bodies left and right until he was at his son's side. Putty wasn't moving. Eyes were half open, lips trembling, trying to speak. But no words came out. The blood, it just wouldn't stop. "Call 911, Jim roared, his voice cracking, raw with panic. "Call the F*** in ambulance." Someone was already on the line. Paramedics were en route. But time was crawling. Jim dropped to his knees, holding his son's face, whispering words only a desperate father would know to say. "Stay with me, son. Stay with me. 8. You good? You gone? Be all right, I promise." But even as he spoke, he could see it. The fear in Putty's eyes, the glaze starting to form, the pain that was winning. News broke before the ambulance even arrived. A Twitter account posted a blurry clip from someone's phone. Jim Jones' son shot at birthday party. Pray for him. The video showed the aftermath, the blood, the screaming. Jim on his knees, sobbing over his son. And just like that, the internet took over. TMZ had it within minutes. Shade Room followed. Blogs went wild. But nobody knew the why. Who did it? Was it targeted? Was it random? And how the hell did someone get a weapon into an event this locked down? Inside that rooftop, Jim's world was unraveling. Cameron stood nearby, jaw clenched, whispering to himself, pacing back and forth. Remy Ma had stepped into the corner, calling her driver, her face pale with disbelief. Nobody wanted to say it, but the air was thick with one truth. This wasn't just some freak accident. This was personal. The ambulance finally arrived. Sirens cutting through the thick Manhattan night. EMTs rushed in. Jim refused to let go at first, gripping his son's hand until a paramedic gently pulled him back. "Let us help him, sir. Please." Jim stumbled back, trembling, eyes locked on the stretcher as they lifted Putty up, unconscious, barely breathing, the light already fading. As the gurney disappeared into the flashing lights, Jim stood still, not moving, not speaking, just empty. And that's when his phone rang. It was an unknown number. He picked up, still in shock. A distorted voice came through, calm and cold. "You should have stayed in your lane, Jimmy. This is just the beginning." The call ended. Jim stared at the screen, heart pounding, breath shallow. It wasn't just a random shooting. Someone had come for his son, and maybe for him next. And the birthday party. It had just turned into a war zone. Jim's hands were still shaking when he stepped into the back of the black Escalade. The driver said nothing, just pulled out into traffic, trailing the ambulance like a shadow. Jim's bodyguard Tone was in the front seat, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like he might snap his own teeth. The city outside blurred past like a bad dream, neon lights, sirens, honking horns, but inside the SUV, silence crushed everything. Jim didn't speak. Kay just kept staring at the blood on his hands, his shirt, his jeans, his son's blood. At the hospital, chaos awaited. Paparazzi were already swarming, yelling questions, shoving mics into security's faces. Someone tried to stick a phone in Jim's face, and Tone knocked it clean out of the guy's hand with one punch. Inside, the nurses were moving fast. Immediate surgery, one said. Multiple wounds. We're doing everything we can. But the words felt like white noise. Jim was standing in the waiting room, surrounded by sterile walls and fluorescent lights, but his mind was still back on that rooftop, still hearing the echo of his son's gasp. Cam's single quotes Ron showed up a few minutes later, his hoodie pulled low, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't blinked since it happened. They didn't hug, didn't even speak at first. Just stood side by side, two men watching a door that wouldn't open. Somebody set that up, Cam finally said, voice low, teeth grinding. That wasn't no accident. Jim didn't respond. Cam turned to him. You know it too. That ain't no random SHT, Jimmy. Somebody walked into your party, waited for the right moment, and shot your son in front of the whole damn industry. That's AF *** in message. Still nothing. Jim kept his eyes forward. I got a call, he muttered. Right after it happened, Cam leaned in. Who? Block number. Said I should have stayed in my lane. That this was just the beginning. Cam's nostrils flared. You think this dipsetch *T coming back to haunt us? Jim finally turned his head. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. I don't know anymore. By now, word had spread. Instagram was a war zone, fan pages flooded with prayers and stay strong OG comments. But mixed in were whispers, speculation. Was this gang-related? Was it a retaliation? Did Jim have enemies that deep? Even the streets were buzzing. An old head from Harlem posted a cryptic message on his story. Y'all don't know what y'all started. That boy didn't deserve that. At the hospital, the surgeon finally emerged. His scrubs were stained and his face gave away more than his words. We stopped the bleeding. Bet he's still in critical condition. The next 24 hours are everything. Jim nodded slowly. Can I see him? Not yet. The doctor left. Jim sat down. He hadn't sat since the party. His legs gave out under him like the weight of the night finally snapped his bones. Cam sat beside him, rubbing his jaw, looking at the ground. Then a new figure walked into the waiting area, and it was like the air changed. Chrissy, her eyes were already red. She didn't look at Jim, didn't have to. She walked straight up to him and slapped him across the face. Hard, no warning. No words. You promised me he'd be safe, she whispered. You told me this life wouldn't touch him. Jim didn't even flinch. I didn't see it coming. Chrissy's voice cracked. You never do. It's because you never left the game. Cam stood up, trying to calm her down, but Chrissy wasn't finished. You think a chain and a name protects a child? He's a kid, Jim. It's not one of your soldiers. Jim's voice finally broke. He's my son, and now he's fighting for his life. She walked out before he could answer. Silence again. Cam sat down slowly, breathing heavy. This *T's gonna get worse before it gets better. And he was right, because across town, another video had just leaked. A blurry clip from someone's IG Live. It showed a man walking past the security checkpoint, dressed like a caterer, pushing a food cart. He paused, then reached under the tray and pulled something out. The video cut before the shot was fired, but it was enough to make it clear this was no accident. It was an inside job. Jim saw the clip on his phone, hands trembling. His mind raced. Who had access? but enough pull to walk into a secured rooftop full of cameras and celebs and do this. And then another call. Same blocked number. Jim answered it in the hallway, away from the others. "You still breathing, huh?" The voice taunted. "I didn't miss. I aimed for the future. Now sit back and watch everything fall." Jim's grip on the phone tightened. "Who the F asterisk is this?" Click, silence. This wasn't just a hit. This was a declaration. And whoever it was, they weren't finished. Back inside the ICU, Putty was unconscious. Tubes everywhere, machines beeping steady like a countdown. Jim stood at the glass, fists clenched. Tone came up behind him. "You want me to dig?" Jim nodded. "Everything. I want to know who let that snake into my party. I want to know what crew he from. I want a name, a face. AF asterisk 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 in motive." Tone nodded and disappeared into the night. Back home, the news cycle went berserk. Rapper Jim Jones' son critically injured at birthday bash gone wrong. Gang retaliation suspected in rooftop shooting. Insider sources say shooter posed as catering staff. But in Harlem, in the real streets, people weren't just talking. They were choosing sides. 2 days passed. Putty was still unconscious. Jim hadn't left the hospital. He slept in the hallway chairs, barely touched food, barely spoke to anyone but the doctors. Every hour felt like a lifetime. Every update was either too little or too late. But behind the scenes, Tone had been working nonstop. And on the third morning, just before dawn, he returned with blood in his eyes. "I found him," he said. Jim looked up. "The shooter." Tone shook his head. "The one who let him in." The name hit like a bullet. It wasn't some random hater. It wasn't an enemy from the past. It was someone from the inside. J-Red, a name Jim had trusted for over 10 years, an event planner, fixer, promoter. A guy who'd been at Jim's last 5 parties. Who knew the guest lists, the vendors, the layouts? A dude who smiled in every photo and said family first on every call. He sold access, Tone said. $5,000. Cash gave the shooter a fake ID and listed him under the cleanup crew. That's how he got through security. Jim's blood ran cold. "I need to see him." Tone hesitated. "You sure?" "I already got eyes on him." Jim stood. "No, I want to look him in the face." 2 hours later, they pulled up in front of J-Red's brownstone in Brooklyn. Jim walked up alone. No security. No gun, just pain. Just rage. Just betrayal boiling under the surface. Jay opened the door half asleep, rubbing his eyes. "Yo, Jim, what the?" Jim hit him. No warning. No words. Just one punch straight to the jaw that sent Jay tumbling backward. Jim stepped in and slammed the door shut behind him. "You set up my son," he growled. Jay held his face, bleeding, eyes wide in shock. "What? No?" "Nah, Jimmy, don't. Lie to me. I ain't set nobody up. I was just doing my job, bro. I swear. Somebody paid me to get a name on the list. I ain't know who he was." Jim grabbed him by the collar. "You knew. You saw him walk in with a goddamn tray of food and never questioned it? I thought he was with catering. Don't play dumb. You gave him the route to the bar. You knew he wasn't coming to clean up dishes." Jay was silent. Jim stared into his eyes. "Why, man?" Jay exhaled shakily. "It wasn't about you. It was a warning. They told me if I didn't help, they'd come for my brother. He's in Rikers. You know how it goes. So you sacrificed my son to protect yours." Jay nodded, shame thick on his face. "I ain't want nobody to get hurt. Didn't know they were gonna shoot. I swear, Jim, I thought it was just a scare." Jim backed up slowly, fists clenched. He didn't swing again. He didn't scream. He just stared at the man who had called him brother and turned him into a target. "I should kill you right now." Jay didn't answer. He didn't plead. He just stood still, shaking. But Jim walked out because there was something even heavier waiting back at the hospital. When Jim got there, the nurse stopped him at the hallway. Her voice was trembling. "He's awake." Jim froze. "Ah, he woke up an hour ago. He's asking for you." For the first time in days, Jim breathed. He entered the ICU and saw his boy battered, stitched, pale but alive. Putty blinked and looked at him, a slow smile cracking through his pain. "You still mad at me for skipping your toast?" he croaked. "Uck." Jim choked a laugh and walked over, taking his hand. Buddy winced. "I ain't see him coming." "I'd see him coming. It happened so fast." "Don't talk," Jim said gently. "Just rest. We've gone figure this out." But Putty shook his head. "No, you need to know something." Jim leaned in. I heard him say something right before he pulled the trigger. He said, "This is for BG." Jim stiffened. "BG?" He echoed. Putty nodded. "Who's BG?" Jim's face went pale. BG was a name he hadn't heard in years. A ghost from Harlem. A young kid who ran with the wrong crowd. Years ago, he got caught in a beef between crews that Jim was loosely tied to. Word on the street was that a shootout that ended in BG's death was Dipset business. Jim always denied it, always said it was a random street hit. But someone clearly didn't believe that. And now, years later, that ghost had sent a bullet into Jim's family. He stepped out of the ICU, breathing hard, mind racing. The shooter hadn't just come for fame or beef or clout. He came for revenge. Cam called again. "You hear what? They saying online now?" Jim nodded. "Yeah, they saying this the beginning of a war. You got people choosing sides, rumors flying, kids posting threats. This could get ugly." Jim walked down the hallway, eyes cold. "I ain't starting a war, but I'm not backing down either." Cam was silent for a moment. "You sure about this, Jim?" Jim looked out the hospital window. "They came for my son. I don't need the whole world behind me. Just enough truth to bury the lie." Back home, Jim made a call, one he hadn't made in years, to someone who knew the old streets, who had files, footage, names. "I need to know everything about BG," Jim said. "Not the rumors, the facts. Who his family was, who he ran with, who wanted payback." The voice on the other line didn't hesitate. "You're digging up graves, Jimmy." Jim's voice was cold. "I'm digging up the truth." The next morning, a new video surfaced. Someone had caught footage of the shooter entering the party, this time in HD, and this time with a clearer look at his face. Within hours, the internet had a name: Malik GBG's cousin. Been quiet for years, until now. Police released a warrant. News sites blasted his mugshot. The city held its breath. And Jim sat beside his son in the hospital, holding his hand, whispering promises that weren't just about healing, but justice.